Hello, world. Welcome to the Mile High Five podcast. I am Carl Jensen, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Doug Cunnington.
And we have two special guests tonight. Tell us who you are and what you do. Let's start with you.
My name is Sarah, and I am one half of Waffles on Wednesday. I am an occupational therapist by day and a podcaster by night.
And I'm Ray. I'm the lesser half of Waffles on Wednesday, and I am in tech, and I don't know. That's about it. That rules most of my life, unfortunately.
We're gonna dig in pretty deep here. And just for the people that are not watching and you're listening, we're enjoying some beer and IPA from Elevation. So cheers, everyone. Thanks for making it out, coming to the studio. Really appreciate it. Now, Carl, you've known Ray and Sarah for quite some time. So when did you meet them at first?
Yeah, I have them. I will not tell the story of how I met them because it's quite embarrassing. On my part, nothing to do with them at all. But Sarah won a book in a book contest I had on the blog. So I sent her the book. And then I think you were coming to Colorado, right? I don't remember why you were coming. It might have been some work trip.
Yep, it was a conference.
Okay. And there happened to be a FI meetup at New Belgium up in, no, it was at Odell's up in Fort Collins. And that was the first time I met you in person. What was that like for you? What was it like meeting a crazy person from the internet?
Well, if I remember correctly, I knew that you lived in Colorado and I was going to be in the Fort Collins area. And I was like, I think I'm just going to tweet at this guy. I know he likes beer and I think he lives in Colorado somewhere. And I literally think the tweet was, I like beer, let's meet up.
It does not take much.
And the rest is history.
Very good. And then what about Ray? When did you first meet Carl?
I actually first met Carl at FinCon in Dallas, was it?
Yeah,
I think so. Right. What happened was I had posted something, or we got to talking back and forth on our blogs, and somehow we ended up in a weight loss competition. And the weigh-in was at FinCon. And so we had never met in person, but we had been talking trash to each other on our blogs back and forth. And actually, a really funny story is when I bought all those Italian desserts and got them sent to your house. Remember that?
I do remember that. Like, what the hell is this? We did not order anything. Our teenagers ringing our doorbell and running away. But no, why don't you tell the story real quick?
So we were actually in Chautauqua, which for those of you that know, is kind of the big FI, like go for a week, kind of big boot camp FI thing. And we were there. And somehow it came up and people kept buying me beers. And somehow it was like, hey, Carl told me to buy you a bunch of beers while we were down here. And so I was like, I'll get that guy, damn it. And so I forget who it was, but somebody had your address and somebody had your, and so we Googled up whatever Italian joint and sent like 5 cannolis and a bunch of tiramisu and I forget whatever else. And I remember calling him up and saying, hey, look, deliver it to this address. It's my buddy's birthday. It's a surprise. Like, he'll be really happy about it. And so I don't think, if I remember correctly, I don't think you put 2 and 2 together until we were at FinCon.
I didn't know what the hell was going on, but I did eat all the food, which says something about me. Like, look, cannolis from a stranger. Yeah, I didn't think twice about eating them all. Yeah, then I found out it was you later on.
So yeah, so when we ended up in Dallas, and that we were running around trying to find a scale all over the hotel. And I don't remember. Anyway, I ended up winning we didn't end up weighing in, I don't believe.
No, we did, because I remember we went up to the workout room and Brandon the mad scientist, was drinking a beer and doing push-ups at the same time. And we couldn't find a scale, so I was happy. I'm like, yes, because I knew I probably didn't win because I put zero effort into it. So I'm like, yes, we can't find a scale. And then you were persistent, though. I think you knew you had it.
Well, I had it in me because when this started, I actually started a new job, and my new job was 15 miles each way biking. And so I started it right after we started this weight loss challenge. And so I was biking 30 miles a day back and forth to work right as soon as we started. And that's actually when I started eating fruit every day for breakfast. So I ended up cutting We have to go back and look. I ended up cutting like 25 pounds over the course of like 2 months or something. I forget.
Damn.
But I put it all back on.
I don't want to stay on this topic forever, but FinCon is 2 months away if you want to rematch.
I could do that.
Okay, let's do it. You heard it here first.
And you're drinking nothing, and I'm drinking beer. Good.
Yeah, I'm going to have a nice glass of water. Ray, can I get you another?
All right, it's
beer?
on. It's official then.
All right. So, and I just met you guys a couple weeks ago at Camp 5, which was really fun. And actually, we'll get into the meat of the interview here. So you did a talk, Ray, and you had this great story about a very high bar tab. So can you tell us about that and how it ties into you being here today?
Yeah. I'll clarify in that it wasn't one bar tab. It was many, many bar tabs.
Sure it was.
But when we first started, I'll back up. I originally found FI because I was looking for a way to invest a certain amount of money. It was never like, I'll be frugal or any of that stuff. It was all about, I had a bunch of money with an investment advisor and it wasn't matching the market. And he was charging me 1% on top of everything to not match the market. So I was getting mad at him. And I was looking at how to do things. I actually found Jim Collins' blog on how easy it was to invest for yourself. And so, excuse me. And then when I found that, I started looking around and kind of went down the rabbit hole, right? And part of going down the rabbit hole of FI is looking back at your expenses and kind of categorizing everything. So I pulled open our Chase credit cards at the end of the year where they have the category spending and looked, and I was like, hey, Sarah, did you realize we spent $36,000 at bars last year? And yeah, it turns out we ended up paying like one of the bartenders' salaries at one of our favorite watering holes. And it was pretty eye-opening. And so that was something. And so we made an adjustment and we started cooking at home more and going out less and, those kind of things. But that being said, we still enjoy our beer. So.
Right on. Okay. So that was sort of the wake up call. And what year was that? How long ago?
2014, 2013, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Okay. So you figured out how to invest. And Sarah, from your perspective, were you on board right away? Like what were you thinking when he brought that to you?
100% jumped right on board. No, that was not me at all. I think when this happened, thinking back to it, I'm kind of like, yeah, I remember this happening and I remember like laughing about it and I remember like making some changes, but I don't know, nothing really like stuck with me at that moment. It was just kind of like, yeah, we should probably cut back on going out as much and maybe eating out as much, and that will help money, but that will also help kind of health-wise as well. And the really kind of like defining moment for me entering into this like FI journey was I love to travel. Like travel is my jam. This past year and a half has been really, really hard because we haven't been able to travel. And I'd always had this dream of being able to travel kind of whenever I wanted, wherever I wanted, and not having the time constraints of having, vacation time, coming back to a job, anything like that. And so for months, 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year, maybe even longer, like Ray would send me blog articles and it would be about FI topics. And I'd kind of like glance at it and just brush it aside, like, not interested. And then finally, he sent me an article from Millennial Revolution, and they are all about traveling. And up until the pandemic, they were traveling full time. And I don't remember specifically what article it was, but I read that article and I was like, if whatever you're talking about, whatever this crazy talk is, if I can do what they're doing, I'm all on board. And so that was kind of that moment that I'm like, sign me up. I'm here. I get it. Or at least I'm going to attempt to try to understand more and more about this.
Okay, so I have a question directed to you, Sarah, but Ray, you could chime in too after Sarah answers. If you met a couple, if you told someone about FI and they were like you, one person immediately accepted it and wanted to embrace that lifestyle, save money and all that, and the other person did not, what would you tell the other person to convince them?
I think you have to find your why and really what it is that you want from your life and from this journey, right? It's all one and the same to me. And until you can figure out exactly what you want to do with your time during your FI journey, at the end, once you kind of hit your FI number and into retirement and all of that, like, you need to know what it is that you want to do so you have a reason to make these changes, to say no to things that you potentially really want to be doing, or make some difficult decisions that if you're not kind of on this FI journey, you might say yes to everything. So for me, it was travel. For other people, it could be any number of things. And I think it really is just honing in on that important part of what is it that you want and what brings you value that becoming FI or aiming to be FI will allow you to do.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Before I give Ray a chance to respond, I just want to comment. You said find your why, and I think that's wonderful because I think when most people come down to it, if you just ask them that, not in the context of financial independence, but just what is your why, and if they really knew it, they'd probably come to the conclusion that it doesn't cost a lot of money. I know you've talked about that with your travels, and it hasn't broken the bank. So the why, unless you want to be like an F1 driver or something like that, your why probably isn't going to cost a lot. But on the other hand, it might be irreconcilable with a job. You might not be able to do this why. You're not going to be able to travel. You might not be able to volunteer, or whatever your why is if you have a full-time job.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you have to quit your job. I mean, if you're really passionate about it, you can do that, right? But I think for me, I think the whole thing is flexibility. And that is a big portion of why we did this. It doesn't necessarily mean that, we want to pack up and leave and do our, and kind of kiss the modern world goodbye and go live in a box and do all this stuff. But it is to say that we want the opportunity to go kind of do what we want to do and not be beholden to somebody else's schedule or somebody else's priorities. And I think that's a big thing. And I think Sarah really latched on to the travel piece of it. But for me, it was more of like, I'm not, as I went down I kind of read more and more, it wasn't so much I just, it wasn't so much quitting my job as much as it was, giving myself a chance to have more opportunities and not have to do this. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, make it optional, if that's a way of putting it, I guess.
That makes total sense. Yeah. Well, it comes to flexibility, which you said, and that's a theme that we've heard before. And I mean, I was telling you guys earlier today, I took a nap because I was just a little tired. And that's the kind of flexibility that I didn't have with my corporate job. Naps are great.
They sure are.
Yeah, I feel good.
I wish we could have more of them.
But I think, I think the interesting part about this is I actually love my job. I love what I do, and I'm going to continue working until who knows when. Like, I might not be working full time. I'm kind of on this modified maternity leave right now, so I guess I'm not technically seeing clients, but I'm still working all the time, and I'm working on my business, and I'm doing all these types of things. So it's interesting that I wanted to have this freedom and flexibility to be able to travel, but I'm also somebody who really loves their job, and I'm not gonna just quit, right? It's a huge part of who I am too. So I kind of I don't know, I kind of walk on both sides here where it's I really love what I do, but I also love having time to be able to do other things as well.
Well, I think one of the things that is really interesting about what Sarah does is that she actually pays to do her job, right? Because we volunteer, and we actually have to pay our way to go volunteer places. And so, but she does it and does what she does professionally for free, but we actually have to pay our way to go do these things. So that tells you right there that she's passionate about what she's doing. I would never do that. There is no way I would do that. Right. So, but I will travel with her and support her because she's super passionate about what she does and loves it. And it makes a huge difference in the world and that kind of thing. But yeah, so I think there's something to be said about that.
So around 2014, your eyes were opened, you started making some changes. Eventually, Sarah, you got on board. So what was the path after that? So what happened after Sarah got on board? Was there a timeline, or were there timelines created? Were you thinking, hey, we need to quit soon? So what happened?
So I guess we're in a little bit of an anomaly in some of the FI space. We never built strict budgets. I mean, we'd stop going to the bar, but it was never like, okay, you can only spend $100 to go out to eat, right? Like there's certain things. We did cut back quite a bit at the beginning, but we soon realized that budgeting just wasn't for us. We just need to be cognizant of where we're spending our money. The other thing is we never really like put in stone, like I need to have X dollars, right? We just wanted to get to a point where we felt comfortable and just kind of looked at the expenses and knew what was coming in and going out. Excuse me. And we're comfortable with that. And that's when we actually pulled the plug a year or two ago and did or was it 2 years now? And did our sabbatical, that we'll get into in a little bit. But that being said, when we started looking at it, we started looking at what we really value and what we're willing to give up. And so at the time, we were living on the beach in Los Angeles. You know, we could watch the sunset over the pier from our couch. Obviously we were going out to eat and drink like 5 days a week. I mean, that we were just doing a lot of things like that. And so one of the first things we did is we moved back a little bit further from the beach into a little bit smaller and cheaper of a place. We obviously started cooking at home a little bit more. What else did we kind of cut back on at the beginning?
I mean, there weren't that many, like, we didn't have fancy new cars. We hadn't bought a house. Like, so a lot of, I guess our biggest expense really was the bar and the going out and the eating, all of that. Like, that was our big expense. Everything else, like, we were actually pretty, like, frugal-ish about. And we had our cars for a while and...
Yeah, I mean, it like the weird part about I think why we took to FI so easily is because it wasn't an abrupt change for us. Other than the one glaring issue, I won a car on The Price is Right, and I actually sold it back to the dealership and kept my 10-year-old car, right? Like, because I liked my car. Like, that's just the way it was. I will say one thing that we did change when I first found FI. I was never really one to like max out my 401k. I was always like, get the match. I would always max out the match, but I was like, you know what? Ramp the thing up. And then when Sarah started her company, the first thing I did was start a solo 401k and max that out, right? So that changed, but that was never something that we really had to scrimp and do. It was just something like it went into the 401k as opposed to into the savings account, right? Like, so it was just something that I was never really cognizant of. And so that's where we made some of those changes.
Got it. And well, there's a couple there. Tell us about The Price is Right really quick. Cause like we have to ask, you just like, oh, I just won this car.
Well, so I went on The Price is Right, ended up getting selected, got down. Whoever's familiar with The Price is Right, you go down, you bid on they put out a thing and you bid on it. Well, I ended up guessing it dead on the nose and won $500 for that. It was a 42-inch television that I won. Got up on stage, did the spelling bee where you got to kind of pick cards and then you got to tell if the price is within a certain range of these things. And I ended up winning a measuring cup. And then I ended up spelling out car and won a Toyota Corolla. And then I got in a fight with the IRS. And so we're just going to go down this rabbit hole. Anyway, when you win on a game show, you get a 1099 from the production company for the full MSRP of what you won, regardless of what you do with it. There is a part in the tax code that says you are allowed to mark it down to the actual market value of what you won. And so the MSRP of what I won was like $21,000, but I sold the car for $15,000. So on my 1040, I put in $15,000. CBS sent them the 1099 that said $21,000. The IRS came back to me and said, hey, you owe us tax on this other $7,000. I went in and fought with them in the IRS building, and they said, no, you're right. So that's kind of the way that went.
Okay. That's a good tax tip for any game show winners out there. You may have to fight it, but
yeah, I mean, I would not want to win a trip or anything like that. Like, at least the car had some tangible value that I could sell. Some of the other stuff I wouldn't want to win.
Yeah.
Unless you're actually going to take it. But even then, you're paying your full income tax rate on the MSRP of everything.
right.
So I've got one follow-up question. Did you get to spin that huge wheel that you grab the things and pull it down? Was it so? Sometimes you're watching that shit because you're homesick from school, and some old lady comes on there, or some old man, and they can't get the thing around.
It's jankety. Oh, it's
Really?
awful.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like all rusted shut. First, I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but have you been to the Price is Right?
Yeah.
We went to Let's Make a Deal.
Yeah, I've been to a couple different
Yeah.
game shows, but not the.
Well, I can't be on another game show for 10 years because I won, which is hilarious because they don't want people making a career of it. It's got to be close.
It's got to be close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, the stage is like this little. I mean, it looks like a high school auditorium, and they, like when you watch it, they actually wheel in the things, and so it's all the same stages, wheel them in and out, and yeah, it's pretty funny. But that wheel is like all rusted and jankety, and yeah, and it's really really hard to spin. So
Wow.
sorry
About that.
Anyway.
I used to love Price is Right. Okay, so maybe back on track. We heard that budgets weren't really your thing, which is cool. They're not really my thing either. But you also mentioned the solo 401k. So you have your own company, so you're able to set that up. And then for the people that don't know, it's great because you can do your own contribution, but then you can give the company contribution up to 25% of the salary that you pay yourself. So that turns out that you, instead of like 19.5, you can contribute, say your salary's 80K, you can put in like 34.5, right? So an extra, it's amazing. And then, I won't ask too many questions. Don't want to get you guys in trouble with the IRS.
No, go ahead. What's up?
So are you on?
Yes. So as part of so this is way back before she had employees. Now we have an official big boy 401k. But a solo 401k is for the owner and a spouse, and that's perfectly legal. And so once you have another employee outside of the immediate family, you can no longer do a solo 401k. And so and like you said, it's your personal contribution, which is 19.5 as of the recording of this, and then you can match 25% of the salary that is paid to the employee. So, if you make $100,000, you can take 25 and put it on top of that 19.5, up to $53,000. So when we did that, when she started, her company wasn't making enough for us to do that, to max it out fully, but what we ended up doing is setting it up so that we could do like the mega backdoor Roth thing.
Okay.
And we did that. And we have some blog posts on how we manage that and all the compliance testing that goes along with it and why we stopped doing it actually, because it was such a pain in the ass. It wasn't worth the paperwork and everything else that went along with it to do it. But yeah, so we were doing that for her company.
Okay. Got it. Do you have any?
Yeah, a solo 401k is a great thing. I always had the option to go to work on a contract basis, and I always resisted it in favor of W-2. And I realized how big of a mistake, how much more money I could have been putting away because you said the 54, 55, it's crazy. It's a crazy good deal. Do you have yours did you have yours through Vanguard, or how did you set yours up?
The original solo was through Fidelity, I believe. This is long ago. I mean, this is 5 or 6 years ago. It was originally through it was through Fidelity, and the reason why is at that time, I don't know if it's still the case, but Vanguard would not let you invest in Admiral funds in their solo 401k.
Yep,
so you had
still the case.
That's still the case. But now all their funds are the same expense ratio, so it doesn't matter. But then you could only do the high expense ratio, and Vanguard would not let you roll in of IRA into your 401k. Fidelity would. Huh. And the reason why you would do that is if you have a bunch of money in a traditional IRA, you can't do a backdoor Roth because you end up hitting yourself with the pro rata tax rule. We don't need to get into the details of that. Google pro rata tax rule on IRA if you want to look into it. But the fact of the matter is,
Do it in the show notes.
the fact of the matter is that if you have money in a traditional IRA, you incur a bunch of tax if you do a backdoor Roth. Fidelity allows you to take a traditional IRA and move it into a 401k. So that the pro rata tax rule only applies to what's in a traditional IRA. A 401k is not included in that. So as long as you move the money into a 401k, you can do the backdoor Roth all day.
Okay.
And so that's why we ended up going with Fidelity as opposed to Vanguard.
Okay. So, Carl, do you have anything else on the 401k front or anything else to add?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. So at some point, you guys decided we're going to take a little break. So Sarah, how did that come about? I imagine you were thinking, hey, we can start traveling and stuff like that. So yeah, tell us about that.
It had been something that we had been talking about for years. And it was like, we're going to take a couple months off or 6 months, a year. Like, I don't think we ever quite knew exactly how long we were going to take, but we always had this idea that we were going to take more than 2 weeks time off. And another year would pass and we wouldn't do it. Another year would pass and we wouldn't do it. And then finally, in 2018, I'm going to back up even before the actual time it happened, our lease came up on our place. And we were on our way to celebrate our 5-year wedding anniversary in Belize. And we get a message from our landlord basically like, hey, are you guys signing on for another year? If not, you got to be out by Monday. And we were like, well, crap, like we can't be out. And so we were basically forced into staying there another year, even though we were kind of hoping in that time frame, that year time frame, we would actually be taking off. So that was 2018. And then we get home and we're like, all right, we either need to stop talking about taking this time off or we need to do something about it. And so we're like, we got another year in this place, but come the end of our lease in 2019, we're either moving somewhere else or we're taking this time. And so I think pretty much that whole year, we were kind of just gearing ourselves up to how we're going to make this work. What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? For me, I started to kind of like dwindle my caseload a little bit. So I wasn't taking on new clients and I was just slowly, my kiddos would kind of age out of the services that they would need. And it came down to, Ray quitting his job. And so that would have been, now we're in 2019 and we took off in August, right? Mm-hmm. It was right after Podcast Movement and ended up taking 5 to 6 months off. And it was the best thing that we could have done. And also now looking back because of COVID and everything, we literally got back from that sabbatical or that trip in the end of January of 2020.
Oh, wow. Were you nervous leading up to it?
That's a great question. I actually don't think I was. I think I was excited because this really was one of the big things that I had been investing my time and energy into doing at some point, in this journey and in my life. So I don't think that I was nervous. I'm going to put a little more thought into that, see if any other feelings come up. But no, okay. Not nervous.
All right. So is she telling the truth? Is that what happened? Now, what's your side?
No, I mean that's how it happened. Our landlord would only let us sign a year lease. They wouldn't let us go month to month. And so, when we said no, we won't sign a year lease, they were like, okay, well then you have to be out by the end of the month. And that was like May 10th, I think, and then we had to be out by May 31st. And so we had to find a place. That was stressful. We ended up finding a month-to-month place right down the street, put a bunch of stuff in storage. And then I put in my notice and then in August we took off and we took a month and drove across the country. We left LA and drove to the East Coast. We took a month and visited friends and family along the way. And then we went to Europe for the max amount of time that an American citizen go to Europe. So we were there for 90 days. And then we came back in the middle of December and spent 2 weeks with my family on the East Coast in for the holidays, and then took another month and drove back to Los Angeles. And at that point, again, remember this is kind of funny. It's the end of January 2020, and our plan was for her to go, we were going to stay in LA for a couple months and see friends and family. And then she was going to go volunteer in South America. And we were going to spend from May all the way through the rest of 2020 in South America. That was the original plan. And so, as we all know, that kind of didn't happen. But that was the original plan, is to come back and go to South America for 8 months or so. Like leave. I was coaching lacrosse at the time, and so we wanted to stick around in LA for the lacrosse season, and then we were going to leave in the beginning of May and head to South America, and then be there for the rest of the year. That was the original plan.
And before we dive into some of the travel, were you nervous to quit?
I wasn't nervous to leave my job. I was nervous. So I didn't know. So it was a weird thing, right? And I mean, it's stupid looking back on it. But when you put in notice at a company, there's like kind of two ways it can go. They can either be like, "Hey, awesome," or they can be like, "Good, get the fuck out," right? And so I didn't know what to do, because at that point I was the only person doing my job at this company. And I really liked the company. I didn't want to kind of like show up on Friday and be like, "Hey, guess what? It's my last day. Peace. I'm out." Right. And so, but I also didn't want to have it be, well, because also we had, right before we were leaving, we did Ragbri. And so it's a bike ride across Iowa, but it's like a week. And so I had this like week vacation planned to come back and work another week to leave. So like, I didn't know if they were going to just be like, "Yeah, don't worry, like, get out of here, don't worry about it," or what. And it was funny because I went in and gave my notice, and my boss was like, "Well, where are you going?" And I was like, Europe. And she was like, "Okay, good. You're not leaving for another job. Like, there's no way we're going to keep you then." And I was like, "Oh, all right, well, that went." And she was like, I was like, "Well, I can," she's like, "No, don't worry about it. Whenever you're done. And that was it. So it was like so anticlimactic. But as far as nervous on the trip, not really. I mean, we had saved and we were looking into it, and we had plenty of money. I don't know that we would have been FI for good, but we definitely had plenty of money for years, for a decade or so, to like go about our business and do what we wanted and make adjustments if we had to. So I wasn't overly nervous in that. I will say it was a little hard to unwind.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, tell us about that, because
dig into that. I think this is really interesting.
Well, I know just if you're going on vacation, it takes a few days to just decompress. So I can't imagine you're trying to go from working really hard for many years and then just turn it off. You're like, "Yeah, we're just on permanent vacation now." So yeah, how'd you deal with that?
Let me jump in first. Yeah. Because for me, because I run my own practice, I run my own company, and I've kind of lived the entrepreneurial lifestyle for a while, this was easy. I go places, I work, and I have fun all at the same time. I was very good at kind of adjusting my schedule to work when I needed to and then play when I could. So for me, this was no different, because I was still going to be running my company. And so I took to it very, very, very easily, but it became very apparent that it was much harder for him to separate and kind of move past his working life. And we definitely got into it a couple times when we were traveling. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was being a bit rudderless and like not having to be somewhere any day. And so I kept trying to put structure back into our days, and she wasn't really having it. And like, I needed structure. I needed things to do. What?
What?
What was the problem? No, but I mean, the other thing is I sat around and did nothing for a long time.
I was trying to put the structure in. You did not want the structure. You wanted to sleep until 10 a.m.
Well, yeah. I mean, for a while there, but I remember in Helsinki, it was like, we got to do something. We got to get out of here. I got to go do something. That happened. But that was about so it was this weird transition where like, when I first stopped working, I wanted to do nothing. I wanted to lay around and lay on my phone and do nothing and watch TV and do nothing, right? Like just nothing. Didn't want to do anything. And then after about a month and a half or so, I started getting antsy. and I needed to do stuff. And then of course she's like regulated. So she's like, yeah, I'm cool. I'm just going to work. I'm like, we got to get out of the apartment. We got to get out of the apartment. Right. Like we got to go do something. We got to do something. She's like, why? Just relax, like we'll go do something later. And so like it went from me having to work all day to me just laying around doing nothing to me like becoming really antsy and needing to do stuff again. So I like went through these cycles. It took most of the trip, I think, to kind of go through.
Oh, if it
even
happened by the end of that.
Yeah.
For me, it was so interesting to watch him like detox from working and first like not wanting to do a damn thing to then like being anxious that he's not doing enough. And like he said, like it was this like, it was like cyclical where it was like nothing, everything. And it was really hard for him to just be mellow and like relax and enjoy it. Yeah, Helsinki was the turning point, but I don't even think I feel like even when we got back, you were still struggling.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes. Well, Carl, you can answer that. How long does it take you to like unwind? It's got to be longer than 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I don't think I'm still there yet. April 2017 was my date. Yeah. So the question I have for you, Ray, I guess, is you've got this high-powered, fancy career. Did you ever wake up in the middle of the night yelling SQL statements? No, that wasn't actually my question. Although if you did that, I'd be curious to know how do you just turn that off? Because I think we all need some kind of core activity or something, or maybe we don't. Maybe some people can just sit there and do nothing all day and be happy. But I would go absolutely out of my mind. Like people who say, "Oh, we're going to go on a beach vacation." Well, what are you going to do there? Oh, we're just going to lay on the beach all day. Like that sounds like absolute torture to me. Are you the same or?
I think I could last. Well, I lasted about 3-4 weeks of just kind of laying around and doing nothing, right, and just kind of hanging out and doing whatever. I do need something to work on. So I have done some projects for her company that I continue to work on. So I do write some code for her company and do those kind of things. And so that gives me something to work on. I also do a lot of the financial stuff for her company. So that gives me a little something to work on. And a little bit like something to sink my teeth into and stuff like that when I need to. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. And I mean, I would, I don't know that I'd wake up and yell SQL statements, but I would definitely like think about things and think about how to do problems and stuff like that. And when I work on the software package for her company, I'd get up at 3 a.m. and go down and do something and then come back and go to bed and that kind of thing. And it still happens. I mean, it's, so yeah, I don't know that the 6 months we took off is enough time to unwind. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't think I ever got there.
Yeah, it's tough. How do you fill the day?
So I have a question for Sarah. So you said your why was travel. Did it fulfill your expectations more or less? Was it what you thought it would be?
Another really good question. And I think this was like another kind of point of contention between the two of us because it is hard to navigate being somewhere. And even though we were fortunate enough and we had the luxury that we were traveling for 5-6 months-ish, we were spending a week to 2 weeks in places. It still wasn't enough time because you're only there for a week. And so you still wanted to get out and you still wanted to see everything. And so it was really hard to navigate spending time on things that I wanted to do, like work-related stuff, podcast-related stuff, and all of that. And then being able to go out and see and do everything that we wanted to. So while I feel like I did a pretty good job, it was still hard for me to manage all of that. And it sounds so silly that it's like we were there for a week because most people, when they go travel, they're going for a day, they're going for 3 days, and then they're moving on someplace else. So in a sense, I think it was kind of a good dip in the water for me to understand what it really was like to kind of slow travel. But I would even like to go a little bit longer and just go to one place for 3 months, and maybe you pop around to like neighboring cities, but we're not bouncing around to I don't know, 10 to 15 different European cities that are all in different countries. So it pinpointed.
We have a baby here in the background.
Spoiler alert.
You notice the weird sound. It's definitely coming from her.
I thought it was Carl's stomach. We normally edit this out, but
If it was that, there'd be a very bad smell.
There might be over there too, but that's besides the point.
But yeah, I think
we could take a quick pause if you want.
So it sounds like you need to have even slower travel. 3 weeks, you need like 3 months, super slow travel. But it sounds like that's half the fun, trying to figure out your balance, right? Like, we're going to go here and here, and you're trying to do your work and balance it out. But yeah, I don't know. Next time you go, you'll do it a little bit different.
No, and I was going to say, I think we mentioned earlier that we were going to go to South America, and that's the way we were going to do it. Like, we learned our lessons from doing this trip, and we were going to go there and spend like 2 months in Santiago. Right. And like then go volunteer for 2 weeks and then go spend a month in, I don't know, Buenos Aires. Right. And that's what we were going to do, is do it like months at a time. But obviously that didn't happen. So
I think the big thing is the routine. And this is why I kind of laughed when he said I needed the structure. And I was like, no, he needed something to do. He didn't want the structure. For me, I thrive on my routine. So like, the first like week or two that we were traveling, it was really hard to establish a routine. But once we kind of gotten, like, just kind of figured it out a little bit and gotten comfortable, I was trying to wake up at the same time. I was trying to work out every morning. I was trying to sit down and do a couple hours of work. Like, I had tried to like bake in some of these things to help me feel a little bit more kind of regulated and feel like I'm contributing to something, rather than just waking up and going, seeing the sights and going out for drinks and eating our faces off and then coming home and rinse and repeat and doing it the next day. And in the initial part of our travels, that because I hadn't realized the importance of the routines, that was really, really hard for me to kind of overcome. But once I was able to get there, I was like, this is perfect. Like, if I can do X, Y, and Z, and then some mornings I wasn't able to do everything, but I knew that's what I needed. And I think that's where we kind of realized moving forward, 1 week is still not enough time to be able to kind of embed that.
Mm-hmm. You have a thing that helps you bake in routines every day now. And just on the point of slow travel, we did a lot of traveling domestically, and we would spend about a month in cities, and that was pretty good. We would always bring our dog, our now deceased dog, but that like forces you to like go on the walks. You have to do your normal stuff most of the time. And then we did about 3 months in Montana, of course, big state, but we like sort of moved around. But yeah, we figured that out too. Like, we don't want to be too rushed on vacation where you're trying to do everything you can, and then you end up kind of stressed out from the whole situation.
Yeah. And it took us a while to learn that. Through all the traveling that we did. So.
And you guys are maybe bigger beer fans than me. So can you just maybe share 3 or 4 breweries or trips or something beer related from the travels, domestic or international, whatever?
Interesting question. Best brewery. So I'll give you, I don't know that there's like multiple categories that you can go into on this, but I'll give you 2 stories. One, we were in Cape Town, South Africa. Sarah, for whatever reason, has this nose to find fun breweries. And so we end up in this place called Drifter. It turns out that the bartender is from Portland. And so we start chatting with her, and she is married or in a long-term relationship with the owner of the place. And so we get talking to him, and his name is Nick. And so we're there, and they're telling us about Cape Town and all this stuff. And he goes, hey, and as it happens, the night goes on and on and on, and he's pouring us drinks straight out of the big tins. And, hey, you need to try this beer. And this is a beer that we do the last fermentation on the bottom of the ocean. And so they like put it in crates and they go and sink it. And then he goes out and scuba dives and brings it up. And so all the bottles have like barnacles on them and like, like starfish and stuff caked on them and stuff. It's pretty cool. But anyway, so we're talking to him. He's like, hey, you know what? Here's my phone number. If you need anything at Cape Town, let me know. And so we're like, cool, thanks. All right. So we go about our day. And then the next day I get a text from him and he's like, hey, you want to go out on the boat? And so it turns out he named Drifter Brewery after Drifter, the sailboat that his father built and sailed around the world 3 times in the 70s. And Nick had found it in Tanzania and bought it and brought it back and was refurbishing it. And it was in the Royal Cape Town Yacht Club. And so the next day he took Sarah and I out on the yacht. And like we were cruising around in the Cape Town harbor with all these South Africans, and like it was such an awesome story. So anyway, and then it turns out that they were like doing a crowdfunding to expand their brewery. So we ended up investing in the brewery, and so that's a fun one. So we end up owning part of this Drifter Brewery in South Africa, which is a great brewery. If you're ever in Cape Town, make sure you go to Drifter. And then the other fun one that I was going to say is we were driving on our trip. So we have a rule that we're not officially in a state unless we stop at a local brewery or stay the night. So one or the other. And so we were in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I forget the name of the brewery, but we happened in there and they were doing the award ceremony for their home brewing competition, where they take all the local home brewers and they have a tasting competition, and the winner of the home brewing competition gets a keg on tap at the brewery for as long as the keg lasts. And so it was really cool to be there, and it was a super local place, and the guy was there telling us all about the beer and all these things, and it was funky. It was like, remember that was like V8. Remember that? It was like all sorts of vegetables. It was like bright red. It was good. It sounds, yeah, it was good. It was just really funky. Yeah, but it was good. It was kind of funny. But yeah, it was just cool to like happen in there. And so those are 2 that stick out in my mind. I don't know. Sarah, do you have a?
I do. I think this is probably my famous story we had just gotten to, no, I was going to say it was Portugal. It wasn't. It was when we were in Brussels. Yeah. And we went to the Brussels Beer Project, right? Mm-hmm. And we're sitting there, and I always look at like stickers on the wall, and I look at what t-shirts the bartenders are wearing and all this kind of stuff. And this girl at the back of the bar was wearing this shirt, and it had this like giant sardine on it. So of course it caught my attention. And so I like walked over, and I was like trying to not awkwardly stare, but I really wanted to see what it was. And it was a brewery, and it was called the Mean Sardine, and it was in Portugal. And Brussels was at the beginning of our trip, and we knew that we were going to Portugal because we had been there before. We loved it. And I remember like running back to the table and like telling Ram, like, we're going to find this brewery. Like, I'm going to look it up right now. Like, we're going to find it. Well, it ended up being like a complete wild goose chase trying to find this brewery. And we had weeks planning up to it. We thought we had narrowed down where it was. We had actually like rented a car so we could drive to this like tiny town to go to this brewery, and we could not find it. We were going everywhere that we possibly could and stopping in like these little tiny towns and like asking people like, we're looking for the Mean Sardine, and they're like, we have no idea what you're talking about. Like, it says it's right here, and they're like, maybe you can try like the beer store on the corner, they might sell it. And we're like, that's not what we want. We want the actual like brick and mortar brewery. That's our jam. And we actually had 2 friends with us too. So not only am I dragging my husband through, the backwoods of Portugal, we also have our 2 friends from Los Angeles that had flown out. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I feel so bad. Like, we are going every which way and we can't find this brewery. And we don't actually think they had a tasting room. We think that they either did kind of like, what's it called when you like rent the taps of a local brewery or something like that, or maybe they used to have it and now they just distribute. But from what we could tell, unless somebody's listening and they know where the Mean Sardine is in Portugal, but my redeeming factor of this whole story is it was at the end of the time with our friends. We were actually in Lisbon. We stumbled upon this amazing beer bar, and they had beer from the Mean Sardine. And the really fun beer that they had was called the Jinja Ninja. And it's like it was a stout, or I think it was a stout made with jinja, which is like a local Portuguese liqueur. And so at least we got to try the beer from the brewery, even though we didn't actually find the brewery.
Was the beer any good, or hopefully it wasn't brewed with sardines? That doesn't sound
No,
too
it
good.
did not have sardines. But
And
yes,
yeah,
it was
it's very good. It's really good. Yeah, they
And I
have
think
really
there were
good
some
beer.
other a couple other styles that we tried too. And
Yeah, they make very good beer. I think they're one of those like called phantom brewers, right? Where they brew in they use other people's equipment.
Gotcha. How many countries have you guys been to?
Oh God. I guess we could tally them up. So Cambodia, India, China. I've been to Australia. You haven't been to Australia.
Iceland.
So then Canada, right? U.S., obviously Mexico, Ecuador, Peru. You've been to Honduras, Belize, because we got married in Belize. The couple in the Caribbean here and there on cruises and that. Then Iceland. Cuba, Portugal, Spain, France, England, Ireland, Scotland, Germany,
France.
Belgium, Netherlands. You've been to Switzerland. I've never been to Switzerland. Italy, Czech, Austria. No, we didn't. Yeah, we did stay in Austria. Yeah. Finland, Estonia. I think that's it.
I hope somebody was counting.
South Africa.
Yep.
Morocco. Any others? I can't think. I can't think anymore.
That's pretty close.
That's about 30. I was keeping tally. Did you go to the brewery in Cuba? Because I was there too. And we actually did go to the brewery there.
We didn't. We were only there for like 8 hours, unfortunately, because it was just a pit stop on a cruise.
Okay.
Yeah. Did we? No, we did, didn't we? Did we? We went to something because we ended up drinking with Leaf and Race. A bunch of places.
Yeah,
where was it? Was it? It wasn't a brewery. Okay.
We went to. Oh my gosh, what's the well-known restaurant in Cuba?
Sloppy Joe's.
No.
Oh, we did go to Sloppy Joe's.
Was it Sloppy Joe's?
That was that hotel.
No,
that big hotel.
you're thinking of Ernest Hemingway's haunt.
Yeah, but there's one in Cuba and one in Key West.
Exactly. I can't remember what the one in Cuba is called. Sloppy Joe's is the Key West one.
Okay. Yeah. No, I thought anyway. Yeah. But yeah. So we were there. We did not get to go to a brewery there. I wish we would have, but we didn't get a chance to.
Most other places we have been to at least one
most.
brewery.
Yeah.
I detect a common theme in your life. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it'll come to me if I think about it. Maybe I'll have another beer and then it'll come to me.
And let's see. So we talked some more about travel. I guess I don't have a solid question, but I'll direct it at you, Sarah. Travel is sort of your passion. So what is it about traveling to new places or maybe places that you've been? Actually, I'll ask that too. Like, do you like to only go to new places or do you like to go back to where you've been? And what is it about travel that like really gets you out of bed in the morning?
I think the answer is both. Like, I love exploring brand new places, but then I fall in love with those places and I want to go back. And there's something just familiar about going back to a place, even if it's been a year or two. But going back and, like, for instance, Ecuador has a special place in my heart. I've gone there twice. I've done volunteer work there, and there was this amazing coffee shop in the town of Ibarra where I volunteer, and it was a place that I would go every day. I'd get a cup of coffee. They would make these amazing brownies, and there was just something so special about doing that. And every time that I go or I think about going, I get excited. Now the coffee shop is no longer there anymore, but it was something that was like truly special to like know to go back and the people would remember you and recognize you. So yeah, I love new places and I love returning to some of the places, not all the places that I've been. But I think to answer the second part of your question, I think it really just ties into kind of being a lifelong learner, I think, for me. And just getting exposed to as much as I possibly can, whether it's different languages, different culture, different religions, different foods, different dress, different jobs, just different ways of life that we just don't see in the US, especially if you tend to stay in your own state or your own city. And it really just kind of proves what a small place in this world you actually take up. And I think every single day that I'm traveling, I become a better person, or I learn something that I didn't know before, or I develop kind of a different perspective that I didn't have before. So I think it's this like constant quest for knowledge and learning and insight, and just as much as I possibly can of getting outside of really what I know. And that is what makes travel so special to me.
I think it's one of the, I don't know where I heard it, but once upon a time I heard the quote, travel's the only thing you can spend money on that makes you richer. Right. The experiences, it's eye-opening when you come back from some of these places, and it just gives you a whole new perspective. And I feel like it makes us appreciate the things that we have more, or our home more, and things like that. And so I think I think that's a big part of it.
Cool. Ray, so Sarah just made this beautiful statement. I was thinking what your answer would be. Are you just in it for the beer?
Yeah. No. I mean, that helps. I mean, we come off like we should go to meetings every week, but I mean, part of it is that, for better or worse, what we found is that breweries, like especially microbreweries, no matter where you are on the planet, the people that run them are very passionate about them, and they're all passionate about the same thing. And they love to talk about it, and they love to talk about their stuff. They also happen to be in odd parts of town, not like the main tourist attraction and the main part of town. And if you go on like a Wednesday afternoon or something, they tend to be fairly empty. And they also have a local that is locked in that has to talk to you. I mean, they don't have to talk to you, but like they're there and they're not doing anything else. So as long as you're friendly and chat them up, they'll point you in the direction. You'll get a lot of like interesting information. And so as much as we love enjoying, a beer and having that, that's actually a big bonus of it, right? Is that, like I mentioned earlier, that the Drifter Brewery place, like we ended up there on 4:00 on Friday afternoon, and we were like the only ones in there. We're just sitting there chit-chatting with them. Right. And that's happened all over the place. I mean, it happened in Cambodia. It happened in, where else? In Italy.
We weren't in a brewery, but it happened in Lisbon.
Yep.
When we stumbled into this bar in Barrio Alto and ended up chit-chatting with the bartender. And we went back 4 years later, and he remembered us. And it was amazing. He's pouring us shots, and it was just so much fun. And he's like, I remember you guys. We're like, it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. It was fun. It's fun. And and it gives us, but the other part about that is it gives you a perspective to get outside of the main tourist attraction in town. Right. And you'll go and explore. And again, you ask them and they say, hey, where should I go to dinner tonight? And they'll give you where they would go to dinner. Right. And so, that's a lot of it. And getting to know them and go back and visit them. And like she mentioned and stuff like that, it just makes it fun. And I think actually for me, that's what I enjoy about traveling. It's not going and seeing a new building you kind of check the boxes and take the pictures, but it's meeting the people and experiencing their culture and seeing how they are and chit-chatting with them and trying to speak their language and trying to just connect with people. And that to me makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And and I'm serious when I say this, I've got a new website for you, Beer on Tuesdays. And I think this could be a real thing. Like it would be a travel blog where you just document these breweries on your travels.
So we have that idea, right?
Oh, okay. You have
not
this
that
already.
one.
Okay.
We have it. It's called Jetloggered.
Okay. So there you go. You've already, do you have anything on it? Or is
No. We just have the URL. We were talking about making it a podcast or something and talking about all our adventures and all that kind of stuff. So and we had it Jetloggered.
Oh, I think it's a great idea.
It's pretty good.
Seriously.
So you're
going to get Local connection.
Actually came up to it when we were in Brussels or Bruges, I think, sitting there and talking about that because it's pouring rain.
Yep.
Yeah. So
That's awesome.
that's a thought. Yeah. Yeah.
So you went on this sabbatical. It was sort of open-ended, but you got back to LA at the time, right? January 2020, things were winding down, and you mentioned you work in IT. So you took the sabbatical. You're back at work now. So how did that come about?
Yeah. So I was coaching. So the whole plan was to come back, coach lacrosse, which is like middle of February until early May, and then for us to take off. I got a call from a major company, and they were just like, "Hey, we want to interview you." And I tend to get these calls periodically, and I'm all for spending their money and going on a free trip and all this stuff. So I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll fly up, and I'll go talk to you for a little while." And so that was actually the last weekend in February. I flew up, and I had the interview. And then in the middle of March, I get a phone call, and they're like, "Hey, we want to offer you a job." And I was like, "You're not supposed to do that," And so at that point, COVID was coming out. It was just kind of coming, and we were just starting to hear about it and all this stuff. And things were starting to shut down. Travel was starting to shut down. All these things, and so we had this long talk about what do we do? And I had always wanted to see what it was like to work at one of these major firms. It's like one of those things, when the Yankees come calling, you go try out. And if you make the team, you give it your best and see how see how it works. And so we sat down and talked about it. We're like, you know what? South America is not going anywhere. Like, go try it out. And so we actually made a promise that I would be there. If it's my choice, I will be there a year. If they decide to kick me out at 6 months, that's their business. But if it's up to me, I will be there at least a year. And the reason why is because I knew 3 months down the road, it was going to suck, right? Like, I'm going from being on my own, doing my own thing. I love coaching lacrosse. I was doing that, going right back into this corporate culture, learning everything, struggling, deadlines, stress, all this other stuff. So I made a promise to be there a year, and that was between her and I, that we would do at least a year. And then we would go from there. So here it's been almost 18 months. So, is it the best in the world? No. There's other things I'd rather do with my day, but for the time being, it's working, and it's given us, it's helping pad our numbers and all that kind of fun stuff. And so, and it's not, as far as it goes, like with COVID and all this stuff, it's not the worst thing in the world. It lets me be home with her. Right. So, so that's where we're at. And yeah, so that wasn't exactly planned, and it wasn't like we were looking for a job. It just kind of fell on my plate, which is one of those interesting things that they say is, when you quit, you can kind of take your head up and look around, and you see all these opportunities that you would have never seen before. And so that kind of happened. And so we took advantage of it.
Interesting. So maybe financial independence and quitting your job led you to another job, but it's all good. You talked about how I thought your story was interesting, contrasting it with Sarah's, because Sarah had a very specific thing, and you aren't that way. You just said you wanted flexibility and options. And one of those options was to go back to work. And it's kind of an interesting thing, because even if you don't know what you want to do with your financial independence, you should still try for it. You don't have to have any specific grand goal in mind. It's great if you do. It's great if you figure that out and you think you know what you're going to go to, but you shouldn't use not knowing what to do as an excuse not to save and not to pursue financial independence.
I think it is. I think it boils down to your options, right? Like, well, and so here's a great thing. I'll never forget this. This was March of 2020. I think, and my friend, huh?
It's all a blur.
Well, no, but when I think you know what I'm talking about. A friend of mine was like, when everybody that we talk to knows what happened in March 2020. Right? You have the 10 and 15% drops every day and all this stuff, and the market cut itself in a third or whatever. And I get this text from my friend. He goes, "Hey, how are your fire friends liking all this market stuff now?" And and my response was, I bet they're liking it a lot better than the people that had no savings. You know, like I feel like the people that have 7-figure portfolios that got cut down by a third are doing a lot better than the people that have no savings. I don't know what, and I didn't get a response from.
Yeah.
That same guy tweeted me, Ray. I got that same guy. How you like it fire now? It's pretty great, asshole.
Well, I mean, but like, it was just really funny because it's like, what are you trying to prove? These people have like, you know, like they're set up. They still have more than you have saved, even at a third less. So like, I don't get, what are you trying to, it just didn't make any sense to me. And maybe I drank the Kool-Aid too much. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think we all have at this point. Except it's not Kool-Aid. It's this Elevation IPA. It's not sponsored. It's just a good beer.
Is there another business idea for you, Ray? Has anyone ever done a Kool-Aid beer collaboration?
Wiley Roots.
Oh, they've had. I know they do crazy stuff.
They did that purple slushy stuff. Remember that?
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, so my idea's been taken. Just like Jet. What was your name?
Jet Laggard.
Jet Laggard.
Okay. Yeah.
Damn it! All the good ideas are gone.
Gotta jump on them.
All right. So you're back at work. Things are
Yeah,
going
I'm back
fine.
at work. Sarah's still running her company. That's kind of where we're at now, for the time being, until the next situation or opportunity presents itself. And
Sure.
we don't quite know what that'll be quite yet, but we're open to it. And I will say, so one of the things about going back to work, and I think a lot of people have this question, is, so I'm going to take a year off and then I'm going to go back to work. It's hard. I'll tell you that. It is really hard. I mean, I know for a fact I can sit around and because I've done it, right? Like I tasted freedom. Like I can do, like we could make it happen. Right. And so it's really hard to like get up on Monday morning and go back. I mean, even 18 months later, there are days I'm just like, I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this. But it's nice to have a challenge and stuff like that. And like I said, like playing for the Yankees is pretty interesting. You know, now I have that gold star on my resume and all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. And like, that's why I made the promise to her is we're going to do this for a year and you're going to listen to me whine and bitch for a year because I'm going to hate it. And I knew it walking into it. So anybody that's thinking about doing that, it's a lot harder than you think. And I think the hardest part is like knowing that a lot of my friends are just kind of like doing what they want to do.
Taking a nap?
Yeah, taking a nap.
Not
Right.
to point fingers.
Yeah, like, you know, like, and so that, that's hard. It really is hard, right? It's like, well, it's like being a junior in high school when your friends just graduated, right? Like, it sucks.
Sarah, how often does he whine and bitch? Has he fulfilled that part of the bargain?
Yes. I'd say it just depends. Like, there are good days and there are good weeks and there are bad days and there are bad months. So,
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And I got laid off in 2015 and yeah, I couldn't imagine at this point. I mean, I do some stuff and I keep busy enough, but yeah, I couldn't imagine. I don't think I'd be a very good employee anymore. Wasn't great before, but now I think I would probably just laugh at a lot of the.
I will say it does give you a little bit of power in that I'm very flippant. I mean, I'm respectful, but like I make it a point that you get 40 hours of my week, period. I didn't install the email on my phone. I didn't install the messenger on my phone. That's it. And if you don't like it, that's fine. You know, like, but this is what you signed. This is what I signed up for. And I made it abundantly clear and I'm not going to give in on that. And so, you know, like, and now everybody wants to go back to the office. I'm like, nah, I don't want to go back to the office, you know, like, and I don't want to go back to the office, you know, like, and I just make it abundantly clear because everybody else kind of like gets in line and goes along with it. And I'm just fighting it and doing what I can.
Sure. So, Sarah, I haven't asked you this, and feel free to pass on the the question, but can you talk about your business a little bit and like where you see it going or any goals you may have?
Another really good question. And I think, at least right now, like I just hired another employee. So I have 2 employees. And I mean, I had my first employee for 4 years before I really even fathomed the idea of bringing on somebody else. And the interesting part about it is that my job was in person before COVID. Like everything that I did had to be in person, treating the patients, working with the families, all of that. Like I had to be in person. And then like the county shut down and they're like, teletherapy, go ahead and go do it. And that was never anything on the radar. And so when Ray got the opportunity to take this job, it actually allowed us to move. And up until that point, I don't think I would have even considered it because I had to be there for my business. But now with teletherapy and everything kind of moving remote, it just kind of opened up this perspective of like, sure, why not? Like, we can at least try it. And if it doesn't work, then I go back to being more in person with my company. And then that also being said, with our 6-month sabbatical, that was a trial run to running my company without having to be boots on the ground, without even knowing that this pandemic was going to hit and everything was going to go remote anyway. And so that happened, and I'm like, my company can continue without me being in the city, without me being in the state, without me being in the country. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like we were ready to kind of tackle some of these challenges of going more remote. So I think to answer kind of the future goals, like I said in the beginning, I love what I do, and what I do within the world of occupational therapy is there's kind of a small group of us that work in early intervention, working with kiddos from birth to 3 years of age. And it really is something that is so special to me that for the time being, like, I'm going to continue running my company. Maybe I'll continue to expand. I'm not really sure, but like it's giving me, it's a part of my lifestyle that is important. And I think it kind of gives me something to wake up to every day. And yeah, that doesn't really answer your question, but that's where I'm at the moment.
It's an impossible question, sort of. So I understand. Do you have any follow-ups, Carl? I
don't think so. I had one, but it has left my mind. Yeah, maybe it'll come back to me. Sorry, Doug.
It's okay. All right. Yeah. I was going to say, yeah, it's tough, like, to just, in 3 to 5 years, where do you want to be? I don't know. 10 years. I wouldn't be able to take naps. That's one thing I've identified.
Well, 10 years from now, I definitely won't be able to take naps.
We all should be able to take naps. Don't they have them at some of the fancier companies? They have like napping rooms or something?
I think wasn't that a Zappos thing? They had sleep pods, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, it was Google. I know Google had them. I saw it. They had this like big dome you'd sleep on and your legs would stick out the bottom or something. Yeah. It looked kind of creepy and weird. I think they're trying to like put waves into your brain while you're in that pod. Like, you love Google. You love Google. No, I love Google. It's great. I spent some time in one of the pods, though, so maybe they got to me, too.
Yeah, they're listening right now, so I love them, too. They're great.
I think this just goes back to, if I can say one last thing, like what Ray mentioned kind of in the beginning of having opportunities. And when you pull your head out of like being in the weeds and working yourself to the bones, you start to notice other opportunities that come your way. And so right at this moment, I might not know what it's going to look like in 3, 5, 10 years, but we've set ourselves up that if a really cool opportunity arises, we can take it. And I think that's what happened with Ray. Like, he got this job offer, and we're sitting there like, well, it's going to move us to a different state. It's going to change our lifestyle, but if this is what you want to do, we can do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's all. Ed, your life completely changed because you now have a third member. If anyone's watching on YouTube, they can see it in real life, see her in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, so I think we're wrapping it down, and we didn't arrive at a point where we can have sort of a grand conclusion, but I'll let each of you, talk a little bit more. So Ray, do you have any parting thoughts? Maybe people who are potentially in your similar shoes from, say, 5-8 years ago, something like that, and they're dipping their toe, they're not really sure. Any tips for them or thoughts?
I'll just say, think about the flexibility. I mean, I know so many people, I think that's the most important part. And because it, and that, her standing over there is the perfect example, is like life changes, right? And so, we have the options, we have the flexibility. I think that's the important part, because you don't know what the future brings. And so you want to set yourself up so that you have the option to take advantage of some opportunity that comes available. Or if you're, I think they say your food tastes change every 7 years, right? Like, so you don't know what you're going to like next. So like, I don't know what I'm going to want to do in 5 or 10 years from now. Who knows? Who knows what opportunities Sarah gets offered? Who knows what opportunities I get offered, or the little one there. I don't know, but we're in a situation now where we can take advantage of it, and I think that is a way more valuable than a lot of people give it credit.
Well said.
I think for me, it's been interesting being a part of the FIRE community, where I feel like a majority of the people hate their job, despise their job. I'm looking at one in particular that's what ended up him going down the rabbit hole, because he was looking, I hate my job, how can I retire as early as possible? And I would like to just say that you can love your job and still be a part of this community, and still want to be smart financially, and still want to set yourself up to have options. You could work the rest of your life if you wanted to. But just because you love your job now, and I know Mindy says this all the time, doesn't mean you're always going to love your job. So it's kind of twofold. Like, you can do this if you love your job, but set yourself up, because if something changes and you end up not loving your job in the end run, you can do something about it.
Awesome. Where can people find you?
You can find us at wafflesonwednesday.com, all one word. Don't Google waffles. You'll end up with all sorts of recipes. And in fact, if you Google Waffles on Wednesday, you end up with like all sorts of charity fundraisers and stuff for fire departments and all. So we're not very good at SEO. But that being said, you can go there. Unfortunately, I think when we went on our trip, our blog kind of went on a trip too. So
we left it at one of the breweries.
Yeah, we left it behind, but it's still there. There's actually some articles about 401ks and stuff on there that are pretty good, and maybe this will kick us in the butt and light a fire under our ass to go post something again. But we are still fairly active on Twitter, so you can find us. I think it's Waffles on Wed on Twitter. You'll see us bantering about and doing whatever on Twitter. That's probably the easiest way to find us. I don't know. That's it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're on Instagram, but we're not.
Yeah, it's pictures of waffles and beer, I think, is pretty much it.
I mostly post beer on Instagram. Yeah. And then, Sarah, do you want to plug your pod? I know it's not a good crossover, but no? Okay. Cool. All right. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you both.
Yeah, it's fun, guys. Thanks.
This was awesome.